Today's episode is brought to you by MRC, a branding studio hailing out of Raleigh, North Carolina, where they focus on crafting killer design work for clients that love uber creative solutions for companies small and large. You can find and connect with them online at mrcraleigh.com. That's MRCRALEIGH, and at MRC Raleigh on Instagram. The good news is, if you find yourself reaching out, you'll most likely get to chat with yours truly. That's right, it's My Little Branding Co., and we're here to make your brand or idea look amazing. So let's connect.
Recorded at the Kitchen Studios. This is the Pencil Pushers Podcast.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Pencil Pushers Podcast. I'm your humble host, Mike Rosado. I come to you today from Fresno, California, as I'm in the middle of a road trip across America. But I'm too excited to share my chat with Jordan Kay, a super talented illustrator, animator, and designer who's worked with everyone from Starbucks to Vox and Penguin Random House. Jordan's work has a joyous exuberance filled with color and energy that showcases her extreme talent for a variety of styles and subjects. Listen in as we talk about how she worked her way from working as a lead designer at Starbucks into making a life as a successful freelance designer. If you're looking for inspiration, good feels, and just an overall great chat with a couple of design geeks, this is the episode for you. So do yourself a favor and head to her Instagram account at Ms. Jordan Kay, that's MSJORDANKAY, while you sit back, relax, and enjoy our chat with Jordan. All right, awesome. We are here with the very talented Jordan Kay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, we were just talking just before we started pressing record, and you're getting ready to move. So are you staying in town? You're in Seattle, is that right? Or are you okay?
I am in Seattle. We're moving from Central District to West Seattle, which is, I think, quite a demographic shift, I think. This area that I'm in currently is really close to Capitol Hill, which is a really fun nightlife neighborhood, and always music shows happening there and everything. And we're moving to West Seattle, which is a little bit more neighborhoody, but still has a good strip of places to hang out at. Bought our first house, so that's really cool.
Wow, congratulations.
Thanks. Not scary at all. It's funny because I used to see people taking photos on Instagram and carrying someone over the threshold, and I always thought it was so cheesy, but after going through the process of buying your first house, you realize how celebratory it really feels when you close and you're oh my gosh. So I totally get it now. So we still have yet to take that
huge
photo. Yeah.
Huge milestone. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. But the little side note, by the way, when I was born in New York City, and I lived there for about 5 years, and then my parents were like, we need to get the hell out of here. So we wound up driving, or actually we drove back. That's a whole other story. But we flew and lived for 3 years in Olympia, Washington. And I really have such the best memories of Washington. It's such a beautiful state.
Yeah.
And so how do you like living there? And you're not from there originally. You're from the Midwest, right?
I'm originally from Wisconsin, went to school in Minneapolis at Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and then immediately moved out here. My boyfriend was recording an album in Seattle, and so I was like, I want to do illustration, and I can do that from anywhere. So took the leap, and we've been here for 11 years now. So definitely really love it out here for sure. And the nature is gorgeous. Amazing. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm dying to head back. In fact, my brother and I are next weekend, we're going on a long road trip. We're driving his Jeep all the way to California and back. And unfortunately, we're not going to make it to Washington, but I'm dying to go back there. So that's really cool.
That's awesome.
So I want to go ahead and start off giving the audience a little bit of a introductory statement of sorts of you as an artist. So basically, you're an illustrator, You're a designer. I would call you sort of an animator of sorts. I mean, I'm not sure how long you've been doing that, but I love your animation. I mean, I'm a big animation fan. As you could probably see from my past guests, we have lots of animators that come on the show.
Yeah, I'm not a little bit nervous at all to talk about my habits with animation after such legends have been on this podcast.
No, it's all good. We're all at different levels, But I just absolutely adore your work. It's fantastic. It's incredibly versatile, and we can get into that later. But I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. I'd love to know, and I'd love to talk to you about your career and how you got started, firstly, because as you know, I mean, this really is a podcast that is about the hand-drawn arts in general. It's not very specific to one style or one sort of like medium. Walk me through how your love of drawing kind of came into play for you.
Oh, man. Wait, from the very beginning or from like
Sure,
adulthood?
Yeah. Like, where did this all start? Yeah.
Okay, I guess, so my dad is actually, he works in like a printing plant, food packaging kind of place. But he originally got his degree in painting from a state school in Wisconsin. And he's a big like drawer, designer, artist guy. And so when I was learning how to read, he sat me down on his lap and had just like a spiral bound notebook that he would draw in crayon, like a picture of a man, and then write the word man underneath it, and then hand me the crayon. And so I would learn how to read, but then also be drawing along with him. And so that was I think a really sentimental moment, and sort of got the ball rolling for me. And then it just sort of, I guess as I was growing up, I always sketchbooked, but I always like kind of kept it hidden for some reason, like never talked about it at school or anything. And if people were like seeing me drawing or something, I would be like, oh no, I'm just doodling, like whatever. And I would always play it down like it wasn't a serious
Was that
path.
even up until high school and stuff like that too?
Yeah, it was really, I don't know why I did it exactly. I don't know why I sort of kept it so secret, or like tried to keep it so secret. But when it came time for kind of looking around at colleges and stuff, my friend in art class was like, I'm gonna go tour some schools. Do you want to hop in the car? And I was like, okay. And so ended up, we toured a bunch of state schools, and then went, and like one of the state schools, we went around the table and said what we wanted to major in. And like, I was like, illustration, just because I wanted to see if that was a major. And at this state school, they were like, we don't offer that. We offer ceramics and painting, like fine art. And I was like,
right.
Oh, okay, well, maybe I don't want to go here. I don't know. I have no idea. It was all sort of on the fly, just being sassy, I guess. But
I mean, but clearly your family must have, I mean, you started with your dad when you were a kid. I mean, did they know that you were really into art? I mean, as you were quietly working through that,
I think
or no?
my family did. My mom is so I'm an introvert completely. If you can't tell by my Instagram feed, I like never show photos of myself or anything. So I need to get over that. But have always sort of been an introvert, and my dad's an introvert, but my mom is a big extrovert. And so she would, I think one time maybe I was drawing as a kid, and she like took it and like showed her friends, and it was just so weirdly embarrassed because it felt really like vulnerable for me at the time, I think. And so I think that might have been why I hid it. But yeah, like I think the arts were always encouraged in my house. My mom has an interior decoration degree, and so she likes dabbling with painting certain things too. And so I just don't know. I guess it's like the combination of being shy and maybe that one time that my mom embarrassed me.
Right. You were like, never again.
No, I was probably in middle school where I was just like mortified because that's the age.
Yeah, right. But it was pretty normal for any kid, for sure.
Yeah, and then I guess to top off my like college hunting sassiness, I toured MCAD and MIAD, and that's Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design in, obviously, Milwaukee. And I applied to both of those schools, and I was like, if I get a hand-signed letter in, like, ballpoint pen, then I'll know that the class size is small enough that I'll get the attention that I need, and that's where I want to go. It was so random. I just made all these, like, super weird rules in my head as, like, a junior in high school or whatever. But yeah, so since then, so I ended up going to Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and
how was the school there? Is it pretty solid?
Yeah, at the time it was, I don't know how it is now, but very small, in a really cool neighborhood, lots of cool museums. Like the Walker Art Center is there, which is like legendary. And I made it so many good friends. And I think to this day, some of the jobs that I've gotten are definitely through them. And so I highly recommend whenever someone in high school asks if they should go to school for art, I'm like, one of the biggest things that you can get from going to art school is that community and people that have your back
100%.
and know your skills. Yeah, it's such a good time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's pretty common to hear these conversations of whether or not it's worth going to college, as being in the arts in particular. I think because you can subscribe to Skillshare and go on YouTube for the next 6 months and learn everything you need to know about all the tools. But the community, I went to SCAD, and I still, even beyond the sort of like long-lasting relationships that develop after you get past college, when you're actually there, you're surrounded by people who are photography majors, fashion designers, graphic designers, painters, illustrators, and just being around that sort of versatile a group of people, of creatives, keeps your brain keeps it very active in thinking about possibilities, beyond just like when you're just sort of insular, inside your apartment trying to learn that. Wouldn't you agree? Or
I completely agree. I think that there is a certain type of person, which is not me, that can do it without school, that can find that community and make those relationships and just seek out as much of that as possible. Me as an introvert, I definitely needed to be put in a space like that. But I do think there's something with going to college too where, so if you're like in your own space and you're like going on Skillshare and you're going on Instagram and building your own community of people, like you can tune into exactly what you want to tune into and ignore all the rest. But there's something about being in college where like sometimes you see things that like maybe isn't necessarily your like preferred aesthetic, but you learn more about the way of working that artist goes through or that designer goes through, and that teaches you a little bit too. And it just, there's so much like creative stimulation, I think, through seeing such a breadth of how people function and work and what they're creating, that I think could be really inspiring and really gratifying. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's kind of interesting. I might go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I'll try and bring it back. Knowing now that you're an introvert and also a freelancer, but also seeing the value in the collaborative, community-based way of growing as an artist, how do you combine those things, the introversion, the need to get out there and be bold as an entrepreneur, as it were, and also as a freelancer? How do you combine all those elements when all three of those are so important to you? You are you are an introvert, you are a freelancer, you do see the value in community.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's kind of a balance of, so first I'll talk about being an introvert. It's definitely a balance of pushing myself to send those emails to art directors that I want to go get coffee with and pick their brains about how, I don't know, the magazine that they work at, or just chat. Like, I think taking that initial step of reaching out to certain people to connect, whether it be about a job or not about a job, I think is really important to me, and it pushes me to get outside of my comfort zone a bit. But then having that recharge time where I can come back home and read a book or draw for myself or hang out with my cats, like, that's for me something that I think is healthy, because I can't, I've tried when I first left college. I graduated in 2009. So like for the first couple years, like I was like, I can do it on my own. I don't need anybody else. I'm scared of people. And I think it didn't work. Like, I needed to reach out and make those relationships. And there's something, I've sort of leapt in and out of being an in-house designer and then also working freelance, and then still looking for more in-house work maybe. But there's something, when I was in-house in certain places, like, I find that having those creative conversations with other people is so stimulating that it really shoves that introvertedness out the door a little bit, because you can get so engaged with a conversation. Also, I really get so much gratification from like one-on-one conversations. Like, I'm not scared at all talking to you right now. But when it comes to like talking to crowds or in a bigger situation, like, I think that's where I sort of have to latch on to like a one-on-one conversation within that group, if that makes sense. So I think, I think it's really important to always push yourself to make those connections with certain people, because at the end of the day, you learn so much, and it feels so satisfying to sort of get new ideas and see how other people work and how they think about creative problem solving. It's very stimulating for me, I guess.
Yeah. And on that note too, now I'm not sure if you meant like if the timeline was correct, but you said something earlier about being a freelancer for a year. Does that mean you've been a freelancer for a year, start like even like right now, or you mean like previously? I've
been freelancing for like 11 years since I left college. But
okay.
When I left college, it was like I did 3 years of freelancing and then worked for a small startup, like tech company. They called themselves the like Photoshop for mommy bloggers, and it was all like Flash based, and I created content for them. And then left, and then I went to Starbucks Creative Studio.
As an illustrator or designer?
As I was designing content, like little sticker overlays. So it was like a little bit of illustration, but also kind of putting together layouts and stuff. So, and then left there, and then went to Starbucks Creative Studio and was there for 6 years, and then left.
Oh, okay.
And then I worked at a mom and pop like souvenir shop, designing for product and doing a little bit of art direction with like outside freelancers, and then left.
So you left Starbucks, you left the corporate gig and went to a little boutique shop, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. That had to have been super intentional, or?
Yeah. So like I really wanted to return to freelancing and working for myself. And I think at the time when I was at Starbucks, I was like, this is so great being here. And it's so like the work was so like I could do it with my eyes closed. Like it was like I knew the brand. I was there. I was going there day to day and getting the paycheck. But I was like, I really want to work for myself, and this is such a crutch for me. So instead of leaping into the freelance world and being like, oh my gosh, I don't have any money potentially, like I took the mom and pop shop job, and I had told the creative director there that I was like, I'm going to do this for a year. And she was like, okay, you can help me steer the ship in a new direction, come work for me. And I was like, okay. And so it kind of helped me remove that crutch of being at Starbucks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Like, I'm friends with a lot of the people that are still there. Like, it's still really near and dear to my heart. It was like one of the best jobs that I've ever had.
Yeah. I mean, I could see being, like the Starbucks job could be almost like being in a really comfortable relationship where the house is really nice and everything's provided for you, but that you're not really right for each other.
Yeah, it was just, I knew that there would be a time when the door would close for me, and I would just get so comfortable that I would never take that leap for myself into working for myself. And so I felt like I was like, I really need to leap off and do it. I don't know, rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah. And so when you were there, I'm sure that was obviously a very creatively stimulating experience for you, probably a huge learning experience, especially as a freelancer. I mean, I definitely suggest freelancers find a corporate gig for a while. It's very, very, I think it's very important because you really learn some valuable lessons about structure.
Totally. And
about how to work with art directors and vision, brand goals, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel really blessed that I got to have that experience because it was like, now as someone that art directors reach out to work with, I know exactly what they might be looking for, and thinking more about the strategy behind it, like where their mind is, helps me create the right piece of artwork for them. So it's interesting. It's totally worth seeing both sides of that world. And it also like puts into perspective for me, like when I first started out freelancing and art directors would give me feedback, I would be so hurt, or I would be like, oh no, they want changes, and like so stressed out. I'm like brokenhearted about it. But then being in-house and doing that, it's like not necessarily that person's subjective, feedback. It's usually something that's like, okay, this needs to tick a box for marketing purposes or whatever they're using it for. And so now I really enjoy that collaboration. It's like, okay, I'm trying to problem solve with you, and I want to make the most beautiful thing I possibly can. And I see that you're using it for a specific purpose, so I get it.
Yeah. I think it's a really amazing time to be an artist that, I guess maybe an artist in general right now, because you really do have the opportunity, more opportunity than you've ever had in the history of humanity, right? In terms of what path you want to take. I think that sometimes, I'm about maybe 10 years ahead of you. And for me, when I went to school for illustration, and I had a really bad taste in my mouth over doing corporate work, and I wanted to be an artist and all that kind of stuff. And but the cool thing is that, at least for me, and everybody's different, right? Is that I discovered that the more I started to do that, the more like sort of gig type projects that I was doing, I was having I liked the structure, is basically what it was. And also helping people too. I think that was another thing, is that, I really love this idea of helping people achieve their vision.
Totally.
And I mean, is that how you are in some ways as well? Or
yeah, I think
might be the people pleaser in me.
No, it's good. No, I honestly strive out of thinking outside of the box. Like, give me a box first, and I'll like play. Like, I love that. But if you're like, do whatever you want, I'm like, where do I start? So I totally love the parameters that come with commercial work, and like thinking about it from an in-house perspective and being a senior designer at Starbucks, I led this. Like 1 year, I think this was 2 years ago, I led this gift card collection for holiday that was like 40 gift cards, 16 designers, and they were like,
God,
okay,
so
make it all look cohesive, but make sure everybody gets to play with their own illustration style. And it was quite challenging. And 2 of the designers that were on the project were photographers, and I'd never drawn anything. And so it was like kind of really mentoring them, but also not getting too prescriptive with them, so they still felt satisfied at the end of the project with what came out of it. And so it's interesting talking about, you said like you're talking about like mentoring different people or like helping shape work with other artists is really satisfying. Like I think when you see the satisfaction on the designer's face at the outcome of everything, it's so worth it. And I think I truly believe in collaboration, and kind of when there's more brains than one in a piece, I think it really can shape to the best possible outcome that it ever could.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, especially when you're working with a specific brand and certain guidelines. I think there's something to be said separately with honing in on your own illustration style and really knowing what you do best, and then figuring out how to make that slightly shape into a commercial need. So it is weird thinking about the duality of illustrating in-house versus on your own.
Yeah,
I feel like my brain is separate. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I like have so many questions I want to ask you now as a result of that, but I keep going back to you being an introvert, which I think, I would have to say that there's a large percentage of artists that are introverts. Also, my partner Leah is a big time introvert. I didn't even know exactly what those were before before I dated one, and and she's a leader in her field as well, and I'm always fascinated at how she navigates that world of doing good work and being respected in her field, and having to I wouldn't say battle, but having to figure out how to navigate that world of being good at your job while also preferring the idea of just kind of getting heads down and doing the work, and or doing one-on-one. So how do you take a project like you were just talking about, where you've got to work with all these different artists, make sure that you're not offending anybody, make sure that you're staying on brand so that Starbucks is happy? How did you navigate, and how do you navigate that generally, being an introvert yourself?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think at Starbucks, since the pool of people I had known for a while, it was easier, I think. And there's also, as cheesy as it sounds, and I know people have different views on it, but the compliment sandwich is always great. You give someone a compliment, tell them some of the feedback, and then say again, the work is really good, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I think whenever giving feedback, always making sure that you're giving some amount of positivity in there, I think always helps. And I think especially as creatives, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, I think it really helps the whole process of making to have just a little boost of confidence and encouragement from
definitely
people. But the only thing for my partner is a big extrovert. Every time we want to hang out and go on a date, he's like, let's go meet up with some other friends too. And I'm like, but I just want to be alone. But so we have to balance that too. So it really is I think for me, definitely a balance of putting myself out there and then having that time to really recharge alone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that your partner is an extrovert, because I'm a musician and he's a musician too. It's so funny.
Yeah, totally. Being a musician, I feel like is such a community-based art as well. So
sure.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So talk to me about your art is so, and I'm going to call it art because it really is, just feels like, I feel like you are very much a graphic artist. I mean, if I were to just summarize, your art definitely has it's very colorful. it has an exuberance to it. And I heard, I saw that you were writing that you described your art as having a sense of joy. Can you talk to me a little bit about why that was such an intentional word that you used?
Well, I didn't want to use the word like wild and crazy. No, but I think I strive for like this movement and for sure joy. Like I think with my palette usage and also being really free with the shapes that I use and how colors overlap, I think I try not to be very precious with certain things because I feel like a lot of the things that I make have this ethereal quality where it's like you see it either in digital space or even in print when I work in risograph. It's like there's like this thought of like risograph, you can compost it, it's all plant-based inks. In the digital world, you see it and it's gone. You like either double tap or click into the ad or whatever, and then you're done. And I think there's something really beautiful and like at the same time not precious with it. And it's just sort of like this spark. And so that's where I go with like a spark of joy where it's like you see it, hopefully you get like a little serotonin boost or something, and then it's gone. And I think that for me also helps me. I think our conversation is now going full circle. Helps me not feel so vulnerable about what I make and not. And I guess like, I mean, it's still pretty vulnerable. Talking to you about it is pretty vulnerable, but like. When I was a kid, everything was so precious, and I was like, "This is just for me. Like, I don't want anyone to see it."
Yeah.
But now in the world that we live in, everything is, like I said, so ethereal and like always in transition that there's no time to be precious about it, and there's no time to like really, for me, to like really linger there, because if I get super connected to it, then like how will I make the next thing? Like I think about, I don't know if that makes sense exactly, but like.
Well, yeah. So okay. So what you mean is that almost there's that your art is very, and I'm talking about more of the static graphic art.
Yeah.
Does have a lot of movement to it, gestural almost in many ways.
Yeah, almost like
is that what you're speaking towards?
Yeah, like gesture, and then also like an imperfection to it that I like don't want to like get too deep on and overthink. Yeah. I feel like this conversation could go for like 3 hours, but like I feel like when I'm working, I get into this headspace where like I just need everything to be like intuitive motion, like what my hand gesture is like as I'm working and stuff. Like I just need to work as fast as possible to see like what comes out of it, and then I'll like walk away and I'll come back and kind of critique it a little bit and adjust certain things. But I think it's really easy for me to do the exact opposite of that and get really in this like heady space of like, I don't know, does this look good? I don't know, am I doing it right? I'm alone in my studio. Like, and so, just having the mantra of like, just going with your intuition and making it work as quickly as possible so far has worked for me. I guess. Yeah.
Was that a process of you getting through to that? Because getting to that point, because I know for me, I'm constantly thinking it's not ready.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's naturally where I gravitate towards too, thinking that way. But then if I get too far into that headspace, then I start getting into like imposter syndrome, and I'm like, why am I even doing this? And it becomes this like existential spiral. Yeah. So I'm sort of just running from that, I guess. I don't know.
That's awesome. That's so great. And that's probably one of the reasons, because as I was, particularly when I was running through your website, another word that came out was prolific, and there's no way you can be prolific if you're too precious about the work you're working on.
Yeah. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day. Be like 40
but I mean,
hours.
the reality is that even though that's the case, I don't get the sense that any of your work feels unfinished or unrefined or incomplete. You have seemed to find a way to capture everything you need, even though you're saying what you're saying about trying to work as quickly as possible. I think that does give that sort of exuberance or sense of not whimsy, but
yeah, maybe a little bit of that. I'm not offended by that.
Yeah.
For everybody listening, I'm blushing right now. That was a great compliment. Thank you.
You can pay me later.
Okay, cool.
But it's interesting the way that you describe your feelings towards that, because literally as I'm watching you describe that, I think about the animation, particularly some of the looped animation that you have, where it feels like there's a literal sense of what you just described, where things disappear and then snap back into place.
Totally. Yeah, I think that. I think that totally happened unconsciously, but that's so interesting. Now I'm going to leave that into what I talk about in the future. But I think this
And you can pay me back now.
Okay, I will. Yeah, you'll get royalties for everything I do. No, but I think this transience and impermanence and imperfection, big time. I think that's what makes my work interesting to me. Maybe at the end of the day, I only draw for my own entertainment, and then I'm kind of stoked that other people like it.
That's the best.
Yeah. Do you ever do just fun studies on your own? Just sketchbooking, I guess that's huge.
Yeah, I do. I find it to be more rare than normal now, because I have so many projects that usually have a deadline or some sort of objective.
Totally. Same.
I think maybe my expression in those senses are probably ways that I just put out on my personal page rather than my brand design company's page. Mm-hmm. But I need to do that more. I really do. I was speaking to oh my gosh, I'm forgetting her last name, Louise from the Printed Peanut, who has a fairly similar color sensibility to you. Louise Lockhart, sorry. I'm sorry, Louise, if you're listening to this. She came up with I asked her what she did whenever she got stuck on some things, where she felt like creatively she was coming through some creative blocks, that she would go in a completely different medium and work in a completely different medium, and then that would open up a whole other sort of new sphere of ideas and creativity.
Totally.
So I don't know, what do you do when you start to hit roadblocks of sorts?
I think walking away sometimes is nice. Just stopping and take a look later. I think there's something interesting to me. I have a big passion, and my partner does as well, but with 70s music, and I really like retro footage and stuff like that. So I'll try to get re-inspired by looking at things on YouTube or looking at old magazines and stuff like that. And I feel like that sort of re-inspires me to keep going. Or I'll definitely work on my own fun stuff for my Instagram or whatever in between working on a really hard project, just to start to think about how to use textures differently or how to use color differently. And that usually brings me back. That said, this week has been wild, and I feel a little bit burnt out because there's a lot on my plate, and I'm leaving to visit my family for the first time in 2 years tomorrow. So
right.
Yeah, it's a lot of time crunch and trying to make it work. But I think that's I think there's another thing to be said too about sometimes, I have a recurring client, and I'll send them something where I'm I really like this, and this, but there's this one thing. What do you think? And I think inviting that sort of critique in from art directors is also a little bit helpful if they have time. But sometimes that'll kickstart things for me as well. But yeah.
You know, what's interesting is that I think you might be sort of alluding to this a little bit, but one of the things that I found is that feedback from clients sometimes does actually enhance the project. You know, I mean, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, they don't even know what they're talking about. Why are they suggesting that? It's perfect as it is. And then, but you know what? Actually, sometimes the client knows exactly what needs to be tweaked. I can't tell you, I would say, might not seem like a lot, but at least 4 or 5 out of 10 times, the suggestions that come through are actually...
They make sense.
Solid. Yeah.
Totally.
So,
I think that's like the hardest learning curve emotionally for new designers, is learning that feedback is actually makes the project better. But...
What's the hardest part of your job?
Oh man, now working freelance, it's really hard to not get distracted, honestly, especially since my studio's at home now. It's like, okay, well, I could go make lunch, or I could make a turmeric golden milk or something. There's like so many things, but I really like to schedule my day where I do all my emails and deliverables in the morning, and then try to carve out the afternoon time for cranking on projects that need to get done. And I think having a really tight calendar of due dates is really helpful for me, because I feel like I always have like 7 to 10 projects on my plate, and it seems really overwhelming. But if I can break it down to like day by day or hour by hour, that helps me a lot. Is that what you do, or what do you usually do?
Well, I mean, see, this is what I was about to ask, because everybody works differently, and everybody's got a different schedule. Everybody's got a different work pile of things that they need to get done. You know, we have a small boutique design shop, and so there is a lot of there's the ability to collaborate. There's the ability to hand things off to somebody else if you're too busy, and I think that is really valuable part for me, because I can get a little overwhelmed with the amount of work that needs to be done. So knowing that I can give that project to somebody else, or even just have them, even sometimes giving them the design to put their hands on it, and give it a different spin is huge. It's almost like for you stepping away from it for a little while and coming back, you see it with a new set of eyes.
That's so funny. Now I'm thinking of the hardest part of my job, and that is saying no and figuring out time management. Because like you're saying, if you don't have time or you're hit a roadblock, you can pass it to someone else. And me not having that for myself, it's like, that's where like carving out the right timelines and checkpoints in a schedule is really the most important thing for me. And knowing like when I'm at 100% capacity or 110% capacity in my workload. It's like there's no one there anymore. Like it's not like I'm in-house where I can tell someone that I need something off my plate. It's up to me to give myself room for work-life balance. But
I mean, how do you do that? Do you set hours? Do you say, Jordan K's office is open from 8:30 to 5:30 and that's it? Or like, what do you do?
I mean, in my mind, I say that, yes. But I think when it comes to a project kicking off with a new client or what word am I thinking of? An existing client. I try to put a schedule in the contract right away and give myself at least 1 week turnaround time. So it's like I have some time to think about it and figure out which day I want to work on it. And that helps. I think recently I'm like looking at my email right now on my monitor. I can see my emails coming. I'm like,
do
no. But oh no, another one just came in. But
change everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a privilege that I have, or I feel really lucky to have now in my career, where certain jobs that come in kind of have to fall off because the budgets are too low or whatever, and it's just like I can't make time for this. And so I've been a little bit lucky where some of those things I can maybe more easily say no to, and then suggest other designers that I know that are looking for work. And I think there's a beauty in having that full circle conversation community and other designers where maybe somebody else has time to take it on. And promoting other designers in the field is always 2 thumbs up, I think. Because hopefully that'll come back around when I'm not busy. I'll get work.
I know. I will admit that is challenging sometimes, because you're like, man, I really want to do this project, but I'm just swamped. You do have to sometimes just say no. Yeah,
it's a huge thing. And again, since I'm fully on my own again this year and just bought a house and everything, it's like every time I say no, it's like I take it with a lot of weight. I know that I want to do everything and I don't like letting people down, and I also need money because I have a mortgage now. But I think that's a really hard part too for me, is just knowing that there will be another job, another gig that comes. Or if not, I'm totally happy swinging back into full-time work. I think I have no judgments to any life path. We'll see what happens. But.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, as we get kind of closer to the end of the conversation here, do you have any future kind of dreams of what you would love to do?
Oh man. I have been really into motion recently, and I would like to collaborate.
God, we didn't even really get into that much.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2,
I don't know. But my partner is a videographer and an editor, and cool. So I'd like to pair up with him and do something with animation going together with live footage. Like
a short film type thing?
Yeah, something. So I'd like to collaborate with him a little bit more in the future. And then, oh man, dream projects. There's so many. I would like to design for a product for more big brands, I think, and do more packaging. I think that would be...
Now you've worked with a ton of pretty significant clients.
Keep them coming. It's always so much fun. They always know exactly what they want right away. It's great.
Yeah. So. Now, I do have to ask, how did that really come into play? I mean, obviously you were at Starbucks, so that helped. You had this, you had this massive corporation that is known for pulling in, really, really talented artists under your belt. Was that? I'm sure that, having that in your portfolio, being able to promote that was huge. But I mean, how did that happen for you specifically?
Oh man, I think I'm not quite sure. I'm kind of sure about some ways, but I think again, Target, I think happened because I went to school in Minneapolis, and so a lot of my friends that are designers know people in corporate there. I think they even have a secret Slack channel that they use. Freelancers with some of the in-house people there. So nice. That was a way. I think there's something to be said about putting your artwork on every creative platform possible. I don't know if Dribble's still a thing.
Yeah, Dribble, Behance.
Yeah, promoting your stuff on Instagram if you have a little money to promote a post. I think that's helpful. Also,
are you on TikTok?
I just started. I feel like a geezer. But I don't have a lot. I think as I get more into motion, maybe I'll do more with that. But also,
it feels like your animation stuff could be really great for that.
Yeah, especially if I partner up with my significant other and do some live footage stuff. And then what was the other way? I think, a lot of people that were in-house at Starbucks went to other companies and have put my name in the hat for certain jobs. And I think there's definitely something to be said if you have places in your city or town as a designer that have art directors, just reaching out and getting coffee with someone, like not project related, but just sitting down with them and having creative conversations and figuring out like what you both are passionate about and stuff. I think having that connection with different people in the field, like in different fields, can do a lot, because having that face-to-face time, there's like, it's irreplaceable. Like I sat down before COVID with a magazine art director here in Seattle, and I was like, going freelance. If there's anything, like, do you have any suggestions about people that I can reach out to, or any like things that really annoy you about people reaching out to you? Because I won't do that to other art directors. And she was like, cold emailing is not always best, but every once in a while, like something, really sticks out to me and I'll reach out back and work with someone, or like I'm happy to get coffee with people if they're available and I can just go downstairs on my lunch break. But through that conversation, she had like put my name out to other art directors from different like local magazines. And so that just sort of blossomed, I think. So there's so many ways. It's just like, and it's really hard for an introvert to do it.
I was going to say.
That's why you have to have the reward.
Kudos to you for like actually pushing for that, Yeah. That's one thing, I learned this like pretty, God, it seems so simple, but I learned this really smart way of like looking at things that maybe you might be a little fearful of, which is, when you've got something you're afraid of, but you have something that you want to do, but there's something this is fear of some sorts that's blocking you. Mm-hmm. You just think of the thing that you desire more, so it like supersedes the fear. So if you desire to meet, that art director you've been wanting to work with for so long, be thinking about that, concentrate on that more so than the fear, and it can really kind of help propel you to actually making that connection,
Totally. And I think realizing that as creatives, we're not that different in the way we think about certain things and the weird hangups that we get. And that's why it's helpful to have a podcast like yours to like see inside these different creatives' brains and be like, oh yeah, they also struggle with burnout, imposter syndrome, being shy. I think realizing that puts a lot less pressure on yourself in a social interaction, because you're like just there with another human. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So that's a great way, I think, to end the podcast. But before we do, I'd love for you to just tell everybody where they can find you online.
My Instagram is msjordank, like Ms. Jordan K, and jordank.com. And feel free to email me as well. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has them. I'm not sure if I'm completely coherent on this podcast because Mercury is still in retrograde and I feel very scattered. So
that's going to be the title of this episode.
I feel very scattered. Mercury is in retrograde. Okay. Well, it was good to chat with you.
Awesome. Well, it's really great to chat with you too. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's been a pleasure. And hopefully we can continue that. I think we've only run through one of the 3 hours of this conversation we're supposed to have, so we'll get back together.
Cool. All right. Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Pencil Pushers Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at the Pencil Pushers Podcast for visual representation of our guest artwork, topics discussed, and anything else that contributes to the show. So be sure to subscribe. Tell a friend. Tell lots and lots of friends. Become a leadhead. and we're out.